let's talk Patrescence and what happens when we kind of skip it.
Hi there. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markela Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode.
Hey there! Welcome back to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast, where we talk about the messy, the miraculous, the identity shifting world of parenting and partnership. And that is without the sugarcoating. Today, we're going to be revisiting the topic that we touched upon way back in episode 4. But this time, we're going deeper, sharper, more real. Now, while we are still barely realizing about the role of matrescence and how our brains change and how we are completely different in identity after we become moms, we do accept the fact societally that a woman will inevitably, somehow at the very least, change when she becomes a mother. However, what about the dad? What happens when he seems completely unchanged? Now, let me be clear. This is not a finger-pointing session. I'm trying to have this conversation in order to talk about the grief that many couples face, but goes unnamed. The husband, the man, the dad that is doing nothing wrong, that is still there, is still working, is playing with the kids, but something still feels missing. Something didn't shift. Something didn't land. And maybe you, the woman in the relationship, feel like you became someone new overnight. You don't recognize yourself. You ache and stretch and expand and break and rebuild. But him, he's kind of the same. And you're not sure what to do with that. Sometimes you may even resent it. So, do men change after they become dads? Well, let's define patrescence, because like matrescence, we're talking about the psychological, emotional, the relational, the mental shift when a man transitions into parenthood. It's the process of becoming a father, not just biologically, but emotionally and mentally as well. And just like with matrescence, this process is messy. It is non-linear, and it brings stuff up from childhood. It asks of us to face ourselves, to face parts that we've avoided. It calls us into becoming a bigger version of ourselves, even when we don't feel ready. And here's a hard truth. Most men are never initiated into this process. No one helps them into it. No one invites them to evolve. And many of you who are listening, you may be silently discouraged for even trying. Because society still tells men to provide, not process, to show up, but not to really feel, to be involved, but not to be too tender. So what happens? For the dads listening, well, you show up the way you know how. You take over bedtime. You work long hours. You keep things moving. But emotionally, there's no becoming, only coping, only bracing for impact. So let's slow this down a little and look at what it actually feels like on the ground. For her, you might feel like I changed completely and he just got busier. Or another very common complaint that I get is that, oh, my husband just wants gold stars for things that I do every single day without applause. Or even he's physically there, but I am the one who is carrying everything emotionally and mentally alone. But for him, though, for you, the dad, you may be thinking, I am showing up. I am doing more than my own father ever did. Why do I feel like I'm still failing? She is always frustrated and I don't know how to fix it. I am walking on eggshells. It seems like I'm doing everything wrong. So let me just pause here and speak directly to you, the man who is listening. If you feel like nothing you do is good enough, if you feel like you lost her and you just don't know why, if it feels like parenting just made you irrelevant, it's not necessarily about you, but about what has gone uninitiated. When fathers aren't given the proper space to fully become, to change emotionally, relationally, culturally, societally, mentally, the cost is real, not just to them, but to the entire family system. What I see over and over again is this: the mother becomes the default emotional hub, the father becomes the helper or the trigger. It feels like he's become yet another child. And so the couple starts to operate in separate spheres. Intimacy collapses into silence, sarcasm, or just survival. The kids grow up watching a subtle dance of imbalance and absorbing it as though that is what happens, that's normal. No one wants that, but it becomes the norm because no one actually names it. So let me name it for you. The relationship cannot carry the weight of only one person's transformation. So now, why could it be that some men don't shift the way that they hope they would, that we hope they would? Well, here are a few reasons, and none of them are about laziness or lack of love. The first is lack of modeling. If his own father was emotionally absent, that is the blueprint that he got. The second one is cultural conditioning. We often hear sturdy men don't feel, they fix. And then again, there's fear of failure. Maybe he fears that facing his inner world will make him fall apart, not be able to provide. It could also be unprocessed trauma. Becoming a father may stir old wounds that he doesn't even know are there. So, what looks like apathy may actually be fear. What looks like resistance may actually be grief. What may appear like he doesn't care might actually be him being scared that he can't do this well. But here's the twist: none of those things excuse emotional absence, but becoming aware of them can help us understand and then do something about it. So, if you're listening to this and you're thinking, okay, Markella, I see it, but now what do I do with it? Here's what I have to tell you as gently as I can. For the mom, the wife listening, you cannot force anyone to evolve, but you can invite them lovingly and clearly into the reality that you are living. Try saying something like this: I know this transition has changed both of us. For me, it cracked me open, and I don't know how to do this alone. Not just the parenting part, but the being in it part. I want us to become parents together, not just in name, but in soul. Leave space and let that land. Now, if you're the dad who is listening to this, and maybe as you're hearing this, you're panicked, please know that you don't have to become a different person. That's not what we're saying. But you are being invited to become a deeper one. Your child doesn't need you to be a therapist. They need you to be fully present, to be real, and to try. This doesn't start with some big emotional confession. It starts by asking, how are you doing as a mom? Is there anything you wish I understood? Can we figure this out together? I want you walking away from this episode knowing that no one is blaming you. What I'm trying to do is offer you a roadmap back to your partner and to yourself. So here are a few micro movements that you can try. They're not fixes, but they are starting points. For one, you can say the thing that you usually swallow. A lot of men that I work with will say some version of this. What's the point of saying how I feel? She already has so much on her plate. She's carrying so much. I'll just deal with it myself. She's already disappointed in me. And I get it. You're tired and you're also being protective. But what this sounds like on the other side is he doesn't care. He's cold. He doesn't even notice that I'm struggling. So instead of hiding it, and making you look bad. You can admit that you've been a little distant, but explain that it's not because you don't care, but because you haven't known how to be helpful. You can say that you feel like you just can't get it right and that you're pulling back so that you don't keep making mistakes and causing problems. You can say that you miss how much you used to laugh. You're not expected to solve anything in that moment. You're just letting her see your heart again. And that's not weakness, it's courage. Secondly, you can choose one small act of repair, especially after you have frozen or maybe deflected. Let's say you shut down during an emotional moment. You avoided, you gave a one word answer, you said nothing. Maybe you changed the subject. It happens, especially if you didn't grow up in a home where hard emotions were welcome. But that freeze doesn't have to become the final word. You can instead try later in that evening or the next day to say, "Hey, I went quiet earlier. I didn't know what to say. I needed time to process, but I want to keep trying. I'm here. I'm listening now." Or if that's too much, you can send a message. "I felt overwhelmed when you mentioned X or Y, but just know that I'm not ignoring you. I am thinking about what you said." It doesn't erase what happened, but it does rebuild the bridge that the stress burned. Even if she's not ready to walk across it right away, you're showing her, "I'm not gone. I'm still here. I'm still trying." And that means everything. Another thing you could do is to re enter the relationship as a participant, not a helper. This one is hard to hear, but it is important. A lot of dads become helpers, not partners, after kids. They want to be told what to do. They do what is asked of them, but they stop initiating connection. And if there's been conflict, I understand. That is what feels safe. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells and anything you say or do will get criticized, then you pulled back. But that creates distance. To the other person, it feels like absence. So instead of asking, "What do you need me to do?" ask, "What is it that you need from me emotionally this week?" Assess how you guys are doing. Ask whether you're right in feeling like you're drifting a little. These types of questions are relational, not logistical. They scream, "I still see you. I still see us." And that matters more than you realize. So if you want a starting point, if you're feeling overwhelmed or you want to start but you just don't know how, I've made something for you. It's called the Reconnection Roadmap. It's not a lecture, it's not a course, it's just 7 simple, doable steps that help you rebuild affection, admiration, and understanding in your relationship without the need for some big emotional talk. Download this one-page PDF at markelikaplani.com/reconnect. To the women that are listening, if this episode touched something in you, this is something that you could gently offer, not as a correction, but as an invitation. So you can download it too. Before we close, I want to say this. Just because he didn't change the way that you hoped doesn't mean that he can't. And just because you may be the only one who may be realizing the distance doesn't mean that you won't find each other again. We don't need perfect fathers. We don't need heroic partners. We need real ones that are there. Ones who are willing to say, "I don't know how to do this, but I want to learn." And that is enough. That's more than enough. Here is what I know. Being a father doesn't mean abandoning who you are. And being in a relationship doesn't mean showing up like a roommate with benefits. You are both allowed to want more, to want softness, to want respect, to want to feel chosen, not just expected. Your partner wants that too, even if she or he shows it differently, even if things have gotten tangled. This episode matters because you matter, not just as a provider or a protector or a parent, but as a human who wants connection too. If you're looking for ways to reconnect more regularly to help you stay tethered to who you are and to each other, even when life is noisy, I invite you to join my weekly love letter, the Sunday Reconnect. In it, you will get one insight, one exclusive tool, and one 3-minute ritual delivered in your inbox every Sunday to help you feel a little bit less alone and a little bit more like us. You can sign up at markelikaplani.com/newsletter. And if any of this landed, whether it made you sigh or cry or think, oh man, yeah, that's me, then just know you're already doing the work. If you're a dad and this episode made you feel less alone, that's not an accident. That's why I made it. If you're a mom listening and thinking, he needs to hear this, maybe forward it on, not as a jab, but as a bridge. And if you're both listening, if you're a couple that is doing the best that you can, but you still feel like you're missing each other in the hallway, please know there's nothing wrong with you or with your connection. This is just a season that requires a different kind of closeness. I'll see you next week where we talk about what happens between moms and dads and how couples can rebuild connection when each person looks like they're carrying way too much. Until then, keep listening to the quiet parts. They're often where the truth lies. I'll see you next Sunday. Bye-bye.